Hello and welcome to Forever Motorsports, here for our daily Formula One live news roundup. Quite a lot to talk about today. Great to say that, of course, once again in another race week. Lewis Hamilton, though, is our topic of discussion. First things off here today, with some more light being shed on his contract. So, moving straight into this article then, Lewis Hamilton's expected agreed salary and sticking point in new Mercedes deal. Lewis Hamilton has reportedly agreed the salary and length of his new contract with Mercedes, but there's still one problem. The superstar, 7-time Formula One world champion, has been locked in negotiations all year to extend the deal that is set to expire at the end of 2023. Hamilton and team principal Toto Wolff have constantly insisted an agreement is a formality, yet the contract has not yet been signed. The likely agreed salary is around £50 million a year, according to The Sun. That sum would restore Hamilton to the highest paid status, above Max Verstappen on the list of Formula One driver salaries. Although contracts frequently carry bonuses for race or championship wins, the duration of Hamilton's new contract is also being agreed. According to the same report, it is expected to be about 2 years. But there is a sticking point. The one problem for Lewis Hamilton is the amount of time that he will be contractually obliged to be available for the Mercedes sponsors. Hamilton is understandably willing to play hardball, the report states. Hamilton or Wolff did not offer any updates on the contract saga at the Dutch Grand Prix. Hamilton, though, suggested it was not worked upon during the summer break. This claim that Hamilton and Mercedes are negotiating how much time he must dedicate to sponsorship activities was also touted by David Coulthard. Coulthard told the Irish News Mercedes will want a certain amount of time for Lewis for their partners. Mercedes will have sold sponsorship on obtaining access to their drivers. Some businesses will have signed up with the Silver Arrow because Lewis is there, rather than George Russell. Perhaps Lewis might be wanting to do fewer days or have fewer commitments. This is something we've been seeing in later years with Lewis Hamilton. He wants to do less commitments with sponsors, less commitments after races and before races, and this is understandable as he has been in Formula One for multiple years now. He will be wanting to commit less and less time to race weekends and will be wanting to have more personal time to himself. So we'll have to wait and see what happens in terms of this contract and what Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton are able to flesh out in terms of him getting pen on paper. Yeah, let us know though in the comment section. Please do vote in that poll, which currently asks, will Hamilton accept Mercedes terms? Currently 50% saying yes and 50% saying no, with Mark also saying in the comment section there, morning. Thank you very much for joining me for this morning session, our live stream here. We do have 5 people currently watching. Please do drop me a comment, say good morning, let me know where you are watching from, as well as do drop some comments and questions for me for this live show. We'll move on though from that Lewis Hamilton article if there are no more questions. But yeah, moving on then, Max Verstappen's major reveal with Lando Norris firmly on Red Bull's radar. Max Verstappen has revealed that he has spoken with Max Verstappen has revealed that he has spoken with McLaren's Lando Norris about one day being teammates. Verstappen and Norris are arguably the 2 hottest prospects in Formula One, with the Dutchman having turned potential into performance, while Lando Norris is considered one of the best young drivers on the grid. And with McLaren looking unlikely to win a championship anytime soon, there is a question mark as to whether Norris may choose to leave, although the driver himself has frequently denied this. Max Verstappen admits teammate discussion with Lando Norris. Norris to Red Bull rumours are nothing new and have only grown following some choice words by senior advisor Helmut Marko. When speaking about why Lewis Hamilton would not make a good partner for Verstappen, Marko let slip something about Norris. With Norris, I could well imagine that it's harder for me with Hamilton though, Marko told motorsportmagazine.com. It would certainly be ideal for the public, television and journalists, but not for team leadership and success. It would appear that Verstappen is not against the idea himself. The two are known to be good friends and live near each other in Monaco. As such, the Dutchman has admitted that they have previously discussed the idea before going on to state Norris has a long-term contract with McLaren though. We talk about it, said Verstappen in an interview with Sky Sports Italy. But he's contracted to McLaren for a long time. But we'll see what happens in the future. Marco has also made clear that they put team harmony first and do not like having two number one drivers, which could make a move for Norris potentially more difficult. We as a team prioritize the World Championship, and it's better if you have... my article's just jumped around here. Of course it has. Marco has also made clear that they put team harmony first and do not like having two number one drivers, which could make a move for Norris potentially more difficult. We as a team prioritize the World Championship, and it's better if you have a certain hierarchy, said Marco. I don't want to say a number one driver, but that is certainly who is faster. The atmosphere in the team cannot suffer. If we look at something like Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost, you'd have two superstars who only look at each other and put the team in second place. Norris is contracted to McLaren until 2025 and has frequently stated his desire to stay with the team that he has spent his whole career at. Certainly very interesting to see whether we'll have McLaren and Max Verstappen as teammates in the future. I think they'd work quite well as teammates. We can ask some of you, though, in the comment section. Mark's there saying, do you think Hamilton wants to take the contract, Reece? I certainly think Hamilton will want to stay with Mercedes for the long-term future because, as I said already, he is very comfortable with the team. He knows them quite well. He's comfortable with their dynamic. Just putting up a new poll now. But yeah, I think Hamilton is going to want to take another McLaren or Mercedes seat there because he has been with them for a long amount of time. He doesn't necessarily want to go to the likes of a Ferrari where he has to build up that team again from the ground up. Certainly he'll be hoping that Mercedes can get their act together in terms of their pace, but I think they can, and it's just a amount of time to wait until they do get that contract signed. Mark there saying, no, do I want Hamilton to take the contract? Well, I think I wouldn't mind Hamilton taking the contract. I think it would be very interesting to see him in a Ferrari, but I think it's most plausible to have Hamilton in that Mercedes seat, and I think it's probably the best place for him. So let me carry on with this next poll. Do you think Lando Norris could make a move to Red Bull? There we go. So, carrying on with the Red Bull topic though, Horner and Marco appear at odds over Sergio Perez's future at Red Bulls. This is an article from WTF1, and it starts off by saying it feels like we've got a little bit of a parenting crisis at Red Bull, with two very important figures in the team's well-oiled machine giving completely different answers on Sergio Perez's future. Earlier this week, it was reported in an article published by Kleine Zeitung that the Red Bull Motorsport advisor Helmut Marko had admitted that Sergio Perez was actually in danger of losing his Formula 1 seat for 2024. He said, nothing is 100% certain in Formula 1 and that performance-related situations always need to be discussed. He then doubled down on these comments in Zandvoort, telling Sky Germany that Red Bull would likely keep him on, but he needs to perform for that. Perez's future has remained uncertain for a while, with many fans believing that bringing Daniel Ricciardo into AlphaTauri was a way of gearing him up to replace Checo in 2024. But those involved with Red Bull keep denying that they were even looking at those options until now. However, Christian Horner completely contradicted Helmut Marko's comments after Sunday's Dutch Grand Prix. He told the media, including the race, that Checo's situation for next year is clear. He's a Red Bull driver. We have an agreement with him. Irrelevant of agreements. We're pleased with the job that he's doing. Saw his drive today. Was unlucky with the pit lane speedometer, but he is second in the World Championship. The only other driver than Max Verstappen to have won Grand Prix this season as well. It is easy to beat up on him when the barometer is so high on the other side, but he will be our driver in 2024. This isn't the first time Helmut Marko and Christian Horner have disagreed. Earlier this year, it was reported that Helmut vouched quite hard for Nick de Vries to drive for AlphaTauri, whereas Horner didn't really want him. And look how that turned out. Checo is contracted with Red Bull until the end of 2024, but before his back-to-back podiums leading up to the summer break, he wasn't in the best form and consecutively failed to make it into Q3 in qualifying 5 times. But it is to be remembered that he is still P2 in the championship. Will Red Bull honor Sergio Perez's contract for 2024, or will he be pushed out like Nick de Vries? It's certainly a very difficult topic in terms of Sergio Perez's future because there's been a lot of talk about it. He has had a couple difficult races, difficult qualifying sessions, but I still believe he does have the consistency and the pace to stay in that Red Bull seat. It's quite tough on him to say that he isn't performing well enough because, as Christian Horner says, he is second in the Constructors' Champion or in the Drivers' Championship already, and he has been performing well enough to keep that seat, in my opinion. Of course, you could have other drivers who could be performing better than him, but at the moment, Sergio Perez really is doing a good enough job to keep that second seat. But this is Formula One. There's a lot of pressure, of course, and we'll have to wait and see what does happen in terms of Sergio Perez's future. Moving over to the next article now. Wolff hits out at Russell myth. The Mercedes team principal does not believe George Russell has any form problems amid a run of poor results. We'll move on from our current poll and we'll ask you about George Russell. Do you think that George Russell has struggled this season? Is going to be my question. Do be sure to go and vote in that poll that is going up in 2 seconds once I finish spelling everything correctly. Do you think Russell has struggled this season? Question mark. And there you go. So do be sure to go and vote in that. The next one then, carrying on with that article. The Mercedes team principal does not believe George Russell has any form problems amid a run of poor results. Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff has hit back at the claims that George Russell is losing his form, branding any criticisms a myth. Russell has found it difficult to replicate his form for the first season with the team, or from his first season with the team. This campaign when he beat Lewis Hamilton and took the only win for Mercedes of the year in the tough W13. He has spoken previously about not feeling comfortable in the car, with his third place in qualifying hampered by late retirement due to contact with Lando Norris at Zandvoort. Even though Russell appears to acknowledge, though, that he is suffering from a poor run of form, Wolff says he is trying to get this out of his head. I'm trying to really bang this into his head that he hasn't lost his form, that it is just a myth and that he's making it up, Wolff told media. You don't unlearn to drive and you don't lose your form. You can have ups and downs like all of us having as racing drivers. But every single weekend, when things have gone against him, it was pretty clear why that was, and it wasn't the driving. In that respect, it's no such thing that in Spa and Budapest, your capability of moving this car is less than good than it is 3 weeks later in Holland. He just needs to have a clean weekend like he did have before, and this one was much better. Wolff insists no intervention is needed despite Russell's results suggesting that he is experiencing a bad run of form. I've never bought into this groove thing or not, he explained. When you or I are having a bad day, nobody knows. But if a driver has a bad day, then he's probably a 10th off, and that makes all the all the difference in qualifying. All the drivers have bad days all the drivers have days that are not so good, and we've seen these ups and downs with George. But the quality of the driver he is, I've never doubted him for a minute. Certainly George Russell will be wanting to hear this from his team boss, Toto Wolff, because he has been struggling a little bit since the switch of concepts from the zero side pod concept to the side podded concept. He's really had to change his driving style and adapt his driving style to this new style of car. It's not something that does come easily for a racing driver when you do switch concepts mid-season, and this is possibly why we've been seeing him struggle a little bit more than Lewis Hamilton, whereas the new side podded concept seems to suit Hamilton's driving style a little bit better. Well, I'm sure we'll see George Russell bouncing back quite soon. He had a much better qualifying session on Saturday. This could, of course, translate into race pace as well on a Sunday. So we'll have to wait and see what George Russell is capable of during a Sunday race. But nonetheless, I do believe that George Russell still has pace in that car and that we will see him bounce back from this struggle in terms of his pace over the last 3 race weekends. Moving on, though, to Aston Martin and Fernando Alonso. Fernando Alonso's magic helps Aston Martin move on from awkward questions for now. Aston Martin came back crashing to reality after its flying start to the 2023 Formula 1 season, with a run of 6 podiums in the first 8 races, followed by a run of 4 races where it didn't even get close. But is a podium at the Dutch Grand Prix evidence that upgrades have got its back on track? Fernando Alonso acquired those 6 early on podiums as Aston Martin made a quantum leap up Formula 1's pecking order over the winter, but has its progress stalled in the middle of the season at the same time that its rivals brought significant upgrades packages. Upgrades for its rivals like McLaren and Mercedes didn't satisfyingly solve the mystery, though, and the team faced a series of awkward questions when its performance dipped across July's fast flurry of races. Alonso suggested that the change in Pirelli tyres brought in from the British Grand Prix contributed to Aston's disappointing form, but his team found no huge differences between the different specifications. There was also speculation over the summer break that Aston had made changes to its front wing to meet the FIA's flexibility tests, a theory that the race's Scott Mitchell mom asked Aston Martin performance director Tom McLaughlin if there was any truth to. We did change the front wing's philosophy a little bit from the start of the year and to during the year, McLaughlin replied at Zandvoort. But this was just part of our constant evolution and development of the car, so no big characteristic changes there from our side. A definitive answer over its performance dip is still up for debate though, but the new question is whether floor updates brought to both Spa and Zandvoort have helped Aston Martin to reverse its decline, or whether its latest podium was simply its star driver doing what he does best. Terrific was Mark Hughes' assessment of Alonso's drive on the Race F1 podcast. A lot of thought went behind it. The move on the inside of George Russell had its roots in practice, just things like as well as the genuine driving brilliance. Some of the moves he's doing on the opening lap and when he's putting the car and how twitchy it is. How he's getting away with it, but he's completely on top of it. You just realize you're watching something very rare. He's still absolutely at the top of his game, and it was a wonderful performance all round really. Albeit red flag assisted, Alonso put himself in position to have half a sniff of a victory in the closing laps of the Dutch Grand Prix. Something he was willing to go fully all in for, rather than playing it safe, as he looks to the inside of race winner Max Verstappen at turn 1, and then at turn 3, after the red flag restart showed. He said after the race, though, that he did believe that he didn't want to make a bit of a move in case he did take out the race leader, or indeed took the race win there, because he feared that he would not be able to get home amid all of the Dutch Grand Prix fans. It was a part of a textbook Alonso drive that started with a typically feisty first lap, where he passed Alex Albon around the outside of turn 2, and then dived down the inside of the banked Hogenholtz turn 3 and nicked third place from George Russell. It would have been a move he'd repeat on Zhou Guanyu later in the race, and one that it had its making in Friday practice. It was FP1 or FP2. It was wet, and in one of the outlaps, I let a few cars go on normal racing. Oh, well, I let a few cars go on the normal racing line, and I found a lot of grip on the inside casually by just letting people go, Alonso explained after the race. So I kept that in my head all the time, all of the weekend in case it was wet. I was ready to try it again. When we were on the grid and the red lights were on for the start of the race, there were a lot of drops on the visor, so that's the worst feeling you can have, because you are ready to start the race on a slick tyre, and on your visor you can see that it is raining. You have no idea of the grip that you will find in turn 1 braking or turn 3. So I thought everyone will be a little bit cautious in turn 3 with the grip levels, and also just outside of turn 3 there's paint in the Ramco advertising, so you have to be a little bit cautious there. So I thought about the inside line, it could work, and we overtook those 2 cars. Definitely that should be the overtake of the month. It was a classic tongue-in-cheek Alonso hyperbole, but seek out the replay of the overtake and you'd be hard-pressed to disagree with him. Fernando Alonso, even in his old age, is certainly still on form and certainly one of the absolute form of the field drivers at the moment. Having an absolute brilliant season so far in his first season back in the Aston Martin suit. We are really, really happy to watch Fernando Alonso go race in and race out, having absolutely fantastic form. Fernando Alonso was also one of the top overtakers for the Dutch Grand Prix. I think it must have been about 16 overtakes by himself, if I remember correctly there. But yeah, very, very happy to see that Aston Martin and Fernando Alonso are having a great show of pace and form at the moment. Keeping on with the Fernando Alonso and Aston Martin topic though, not necessarily Fernando Alonso, but Aston Martin have announced a Monza replacement for Lance Stroll. Aston Martin have announced the reserve driver Felipe Drugovich will take part in free practice 1 at the Italian Grand Prix in place of Lance Stroll. Stroll this season has struggled to keep up with his esteemed teammate Fernando Alonso, who has managed to achieve 7 podium finishes in the first 13 races of the season. Let's go and change a poll there. SK also in the comment section saying it would be nice to see Mick racing again. I certainly agree with you there. It would be great to have Mick Schumacher back in the Formula 1 grid. As Mark also giving his opinions there about Fernando Alonso. Let's just end the poll here. Everyone pretty much saying that George Russell has struggled this season. And let's go ask a question about Aston Martin and Fernando Alonso. I'm putting up another poll for you now. So how much longer do you see Stroll staying in Formula 1? Option 1 is he's leaving soon to go and play tennis. There we go. I did spell that right. Leaving soon to play tennis. 2 years. Or till he's bored because his dad owns the team. And there you go. So option 1 is he's leaving soon to go play tennis. 2 years is the middle option. And the third option is until he's bored because his dad owns the team. Oh, I can't put in all of that. Until he's bored will be the last option then. So that is up now. So we will carry on reading this article about Aston Martin and their reserve driver coming in for free practice 1 at the Italian Grand Prix. Stroll has suggested that this season Stroll has struggled this season to keep up with his esteemed teammate Fernando Alonso, who has managed to achieve 7 podium finishes in the first 13 races of the season. In comparison, Stroll hasn't managed a single podium and is currently sat in 9th position in the Drivers' World Championship, whilst the 42-year-old Alonso is 3rd, 121 points ahead of Stroll. Despite this, Aston Martin are happy with Stroll and will be hoping he can push them towards a top 2 finish in the Constructors' Championship as the season goes on. This appearance for Drugovich is simply mandatory, as all teams are required to give their reserve drivers at least 2 practice sessions. The Brazilian Italian hasn't appeared in Formula 1 since he took part in testing in Bahrain at the start of the season, where he was required to step in for Stroll after the Canadian suffered a cycling injury. He was quoted as saying, "Since Bahrain, I have covered many more kilometers in an F1 car. So I understand even better now how I can offer valuable feedback," Drugovich told Autosport. Of course, Drugovich will be desperate to impress his Aston Martin team with the hope that one day they will see him as a natural replacement for either Stroll or Alonso if either one of them decides to move on from the sport. Monza was where he won his Formula 2 title last year, and he will be hoping those memories can help him perform well in the car and impress the team. "I can't wait to get behind the wheel of the AMR 23 again," he continued. "The car felt great when I drove it in pre-season testing, and it will be fascinating to see how it has improved since then. I spent a lot of time in the simulator helping to develop the car, so understanding how that relates to reality will also be very valuable. Of course, teams are stipulated by the FIA to allow their young drivers to get into a Formula 1 seat. I think it is at least 2 or 3 times throughout the season, so this will be Aston Martin fulfilling those stipulations here. Moving on though to our final 2 articles, getting on with our friends who all support Ferrari, and hopefully that this won't be bringing them too much tears, but Ferrari will be bringing back their yellow. Ferrari will be bringing back the yellow for special Le Mans inspired Monza livery. So if you haven't seen already, Ferrari have released special race overalls for the race weekend in Monza at their home Grand Prix. So they look a little bit like McDonald's workers, but yeah, they look great nonetheless. Now they also have some yellow on their car to match. So if they didn't look like McDonald's clowns enough, now they do even more with yellow on their Ferrari SF23. Ferrari have added some yellow to their car as they unveil a special livery to be run at their home race this weekend in Monza. Although Imola is closer to their Maranello base, it is inconsistency. Although Imola is closer to their Maranello base, its inconsistency of appearing on the calendar has allowed Monza to become regarded as the home race of the sport's most famous team. This year, as they have done in previous seasons, Ferrari are honouring their home Grand Prix by racing in a unique livery designed for the Italian Grand Prix. Ferrari invite Le Mans winner and unveil their Monza livery. The car has seen a splash of yellow thrown onto it with the engine cover and driver's number now in the same colour as the Ferrari badge. Unlike last year, the Ferrari logo on the rear wing remains white, but the nose and the inside of the wheel covers have been changed. Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc will also wear special race suits, and while they have resisted the urge to return to the full yellow, there is still a healthy dose of the yellow on the overalls and the helmet. As well as the livery, Ferrari will also be bringing along some special guests, most notably Antonio Giovinazzi and Alessandro Pierguidi, who guided the team to Le Mans victory earlier this year, the only victory that Ferrari will get probably this year. Sorry, Ferrari fans. The winner's trophy will be brought to the track by the crew of the 499P car and Antonio Fuoco, who in the number 50 car took pole position and set the fastest race lap at the Le Mans, will also be there. The walls of the walkway leading from the paddock to the pit garage will feature illustrations of the Scuderia's milestones in Formula 1, as well as in other categories where owners have had their cars raced. So pretty much they will only go up until 2007, and that's about it, because there's not much to talk about going on from then onwards. Sorry, Ferrari fans, I'm really going at you today. As Ashke Diman says, I think McDonald's workers would also make better strategies than Ferrari. Gosh, we're really hurting the Ferrari fans here today. Mark also saying, so now Ferrari really does look like McDonald's delivery drivers. gosh, the memes that are going to be coming out about Ferrari this race weekend. I'm going to have to do that meme review a bit later. So moving on to our final article, also talking a little bit about Ferrari. If the first article didn't make you cry, certainly the second one will. Leclerc has hit out at wrong Ferrari moves and bemoans at their inconsistency. Charles Leclerc has admitted that he does not understand what Ferrari are doing wrong after he endured a nightmare Spanish Grand Prix, stating that his car behaved erratically during the race. It's a bit of an old article, but this is not the one that I wanted, but he actually has been speaking about it again recently. Pretty much just saying that he is not really enjoying the way that this car is handling at the moment. He's really struggling to understand. He doesn't understand, or he can't predict when the car is going to have understeer or oversteer. There is just no predictability in the car. And when you have a race car that is doing this, it really, really does not help you. So he continues to say, I don't understand what we are doing wrong, but we are doing something wrong. I went from a first hard tyre to a second hard tyre in the last stint. I don't want to hear about their strategy. We have to understand and work, but it's been a few races now where we are struggling with conditions or having a really peaky car, and today is no better. It did feel better, but the limitations were the opposite, he added. Yesterday I could not drive. I had a rear that was super loose and strange. We will analyze all of this at the factory. The feeding was a little bit better today. The second and third stints were quite a bit better. I feel like all weekend we have been speaking with the drivers and we are struggling. It's such a tiny window, and in these conditions on this track, it seems to be more sensitive than others. So of course this is coming from the Spanish Grand Prix, but Charles Leclerc is still struggling even this race weekend, as he is speaking about the inconsistencies of the SF23. Let me try and see if I can find it even more recently. There we go. Charles Leclerc says, I have no... please don't tell me this is all in Italian. No, it's not. Thank goodness. Charles Leclerc says, I have no idea if I will understeer or oversteer. Charles Leclerc lacks confidence in the SF23 and its handling. A fact he outlined through a difficult weekend in Zandvoort. The Monegasque's attempts to find the car's limits, but he explains that the inconsistent feedback prevents this. Ferrari started the year with some relevantly promising speed in Bahrain, albeit not enough to challenge Red Bull. A DNF in Bahrain, grid penalty in Jeddah, pole position in Baku, and second DNF in Australia made it difficult to gauge Leclerc's raw potential at the early stages of 2023. He continues to say, we've had a very difficult balance and a very difficult car to drive all weekend. We definitely need to look into it because we're struggling a lot with the car balance, especially. It makes it very difficult for us to drive. At the moment, I'm getting into a corner and I have zero idea of whether I'm going to have a huge understeer or huge oversteer. And that makes it very, very difficult for us. A completely new package has been promised by Ferrari for 2024, with technical director Enrico Cardile hoping to correct the inherent weakness from this season. There will be a few upgrades to the SF20. Gosh, I'm really struggling. There will be a few upgrades to the SF23 in the next 9 rounds, but a significant overhaul over the winter will be required to make a drastic step forward. This is certainly not what Ferrari fans would be wanting to hear going into this Monza race weekend, because they would be wanting the Ferraris to have a little bit more pace and be wanting to challenge possibly for podium positions, but it certainly does not seem very likely at this stage. So, very disappointing to hear that Ferrari are still struggling with their upgrades and with their package, and we'll be hoping that they do get to the bottom of this before next season, because we want to see them being able to challenge for a title fight. Nonetheless, though, that is it from me here today for my live daily news roundup. Thank you very much for watching me here on Forever Motorsports. Do be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. We are so close now to 1,000 subscribers. And we do appreciate every single one of you for watching alongside with us. Thank you to Ashke and Mark for being in the comment section. I don't know who else was watching alongside with us. We have 6 of you all watching alongside with us concurrently. Please do be sure to drop a comment and a like in the comment section. Yeah, thank you very much for watching. I have been Reece.